Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we zoom in onto the Asian Beach Games in Sanya, China. What are the interesting sports played there? What does Sanya bring to the event? To unpack the questions, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Fu Yu and Brandon Yates. Alright, the 6th edition of the Asian Beach Games have wrapped up in Sanya, China. It's a games that features many unique sports, from teqball to beach kabaddi, from the spinning 360-degree dunk in beach handball to the open water polo. For you, out of all the quirky events at Asian Beach Games, which one do you find the most bizarre and wildly entertaining to watch?
Speaking of sports that are entertaining, I have to mention beach kabaddi. It's the only sport at this edition of the Asian Beach Games that the host country is not participating in. So naturally, I'm curious about what this sport is like and how it's played. Apparently, this is also somewhat an ancient game. It originated, I believe, in South Asia. India is one of the dominant countries in this sport. Some people in China compare it to a children's game here. We call it the eagle and chicken.
Yeah.
It's a game where one person plays as a hen and shields everyone else from the eagle who is trying to catch the people behind.
It was our favorite game.
Definitely one of mine. I see some similarities here, except the Chinese children's game, you basically move in a straight line behind the hen, so you move as a group. And in kabaddi or beach kabaddi, the players move individually. It still makes it easier for us to understand the rules, because I've played tons of eagle and chicken as a kid. Having something that resembles beach kabaddi really, I guess, kind of entertaining for us, because it brings something which is not popular or something that not many people have heard of close to us. A weird part or bizarre part is that I find it very weird that the raider has to chant kabaddi, kabaddi, kabaddi all the time throughout a raid.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
It makes no sense to me. And since this is a new sport, I looked up the rules. Apparently, they do that to confirm that the raider is not inhaling, which I don't understand why. So that rule makes it a loud sport in itself, with or without the spectators cheering, which I find very uncommon. You don't find many other sports that it's in itself comes with audio, with voice. I'm not such a big fan of tanning, but if I have a chance to try out a new sport, I don't mind getting a bit darker.
Right. I see how you compare kabaddi with our eagle and the chicken game, but kabaddi can be way more brutal.
Yeah.
Brandon, I guess you are familiar with beach sports since you live in Cape Town.
Yeah.
That's just my assumption. Is there any event from the Asian Beach Games that you really want to try yourself?
Well, I'm the opposite of you. For you, I'm definitely a big fan of tanning, but I try and tan every day, even in winter. But I don't like... Sometimes with beach sports, like, I don't like to tan when there's uncontrolled sun, you know what I mean? Like, I like to know that there's a cover where I can go. So I like to be in the sun, but then when I'm done, I like to go and like sit in the shade, you know? So I'll do like 20 minutes and then I'll go into the shade. Whereas like a lot of these beach sports, or you're in the sun 24/7,
Yeah,
or like
the umbrella in
Myanmar,
Beijing
like
explains that.
Yeah, exactly. But also in Yanguang, in Cape Town, like a lot of people will go to the beach at like 8 a.m. And then just sit in the sun with like no umbrella until 6 p.m., which I think is just insane. I don't know how people do that, even with sunscreen. But yeah, like for example, so with water polo, like that's a very, very common sport in South Africa, and you would put like a lot of, because it's a summer sport as well. So you would, I mean, you're not really concerned about like the shoulders down, but you'd put a lot of sunscreen on your face, 50 plus, and you'd put it on at like the beginning of the game, halftime. But yeah, so I played water polo for many, many years, like from, let's say, eighth grade all the way to, my final year in matric, and then a little bit in university as well. And I did play open water polo once or twice. And that is a pretty crazy experience because water polo on its own is like a pretty more intense sport than it looks because when you're watching it like as an observer, you kind of just see like heads bobbing and
Yeah.
hands and the ball being thrown around. But the amount of action that's happening under the pool, like, trying to stay above water and the physicality of it and people scratch and bite and kick and like the craziest things happen underwater because you can't referee it. Like you can only referee what you see above the water. So like whatever happens underwater is kind of like at least at high school level. Like I'm sure at the Olympics and stuff it'll get a bit more technical with underwater cameras and stuff. But at high school and university, people did whatever they wanted under the water with no rules whatsoever. It's something that you really do have to try to get to grips with how the sport operates. And I think open water polo at the games is a good example of that because the players have to deal with all of that, and then they have to deal with all of these other crazy things like no barriers and waves and like if you have a fear of open water, which a lot of people do, including myself, like
Yeah, me too.
even though I've gone like Yangguang, like you've mentioned, we do definitely have a beach lifestyle and spend a lot of time on the beach and outdoors, especially in summer. And you swim like in the waves, but you never really spend too much time in open water where you can't see the bottom. And I think with with open water polo, that's always a concern, because it's kind of like a fear of heights. Like it's not really logical, but like when you're in the water, you think, geez, is there like a shark underneath there? Is there like a stingray? You don't know. I always view it as like I'm entering somebody else's home. Like, it's not my home. It's like the sea
Shark's home.
The
animals'
shark's
home.
home. Yeah.
I always feel like if they see me, they can be like, well, he's invading, so I can attack him. That's kind of whenever I'm in open water, I don't like to spend too much time in it. But apart from that fear, like the which I'm sure some of the the players that were playing had, all of the other elements, so ball control becoming unpredictable, positioning is dynamic, the physical demand, which is already high, increases dramatically. So yeah, I think open water polo is probably something that is depth. Well, I can tell you is very interesting to play, and hopefully will be something that becomes more and more watched and more played at like an elite national or international level. But you won't catch me playing that sport again in a pool, maybe, but definitely not in open water, and certainly not in the ocean. Maybe a lagoon or
Yeah.
something. Maybe.
Yeah, the shark
Yeah.
part definitely made so open water polo the least sport I want to try among all the Asian beach game
Exactly.
sports. Well, as a
Yeah.
football fan, I found teqball really interesting to watch. Just imagine Lionel Messi and the Chinese table tennis queen Sun Ying-sha had a baby, which may never happen, even in the parallel world. But anyway, that's teqball.
Yeah.
The players use their feet, chest, and head to smash the ball onto a curved table. No hands, no double touches. It's like a football chess on the sand. And this year, teqball was making its Asian Beach Games debut, and turns out Thailand is the most successful country in the sport. They bagged all 3 gold medals on offer in teqball in Sanya.
Yeah, that's a surprise because it originated from Hungary. And
Oh, yeah?
yeah, I'm surprised to find out that an Asian country is doing so well.
And when I looked into it, I found that Thailand is also the most successful delegation in Asian Beach Games history, way ahead of
Wow.
other Asian countries in medal counts.
Well, they've got a very big beach culture, that's
Yeah.
for sure. When I was in Thailand, I think I spent like 90% of the time of my trip on the beach. So they like 365 days of the year, the locals probably visit the beach at least once a day, every single day.
Right, but still, it's quite a big surprise to me. But anyway, back to Sanya, the city gave us some really, unexpected moments like robotic cleaners sifts shells and footprints out of the competition sands, tickets starting at $4, 5 entire sports free to watch for fans, and even the ticket economy linking the restaurants and hotels. For you, from your perspective, what is the one behind the scene detail that surprised you the most in Sanya?
To begin with, I like everything you just mentioned, but also I really like the concept of a zero waste sporting event. This we're very familiar with low carbon. and zero carbon sporting events. That became a trend after the 2022 Beijing Olympic Games. But here in Sanya, they're really going out of their way to make sure there's no waste. For example, they are restricting plastics and paper use, and also they're using recyclable materials. And for solid waste, there's a management system where they make sure that everything that's coming out of the beach games is manageable and traceable. Those measures are part of Sanya's efforts of playing an exemplary role as one of the United Nations 20 worldwide cities towards zero waste. And I think that'll help Sanya and Hainan province become a leader in green development. And also, speaking of the robot that works on the beach, they're very interesting. They do a good job. There's one fun fact. They're nicknamed 下无尽, which is named after the character in the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West. Yes, yeah. And Sha Wujing is the third disciple of Xuanzang, the monk. The interesting part is that Sha Wujing, in a lot of the English versions of the Journey to the West, Sha Wujing's name translates to Sandy. So you see the relevance here. It's a perfect name for the robots that serve on the beach. Very, very interesting part of this sand cleaning robot.
Yeah, it's safe to say we can call the robots Sandys. It's a cool name. I like that. What seems remarkable to me is that every single Asian country showed up at Asian Beach Games this time in Sanya. Yeah. The athletes' village really turned into a swap meet. Songs, snacks, pins, and selfies. They seemed really happy there. Brandon, looking at the bigger picture, is there anything from the beach games, whether it's the relaxed vibe, the green technology, or the low cost access, that you think the traditional Olympics or other sports events should seriously consider borrowing?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think attracting athletes from all of the Asian nations or any nations in the world to compete in any event like that at Sanya, I don't think attracting nations is going to be too difficult to get to a venue like that. It's even if the competition is very difficult, I think when you're not competing, it's quite a nice place to go. I know I haven't been myself, but my mom has been quite a few times, and she loves it over there. One of her favorite holiday destinations in the world, so I can see why. People really did enjoy going over there. From a couple of other things, for example, for spectators, I think definitely the accessibility and the quoted low cost hosting, I think that's something that is definitely going to be hopefully looked at going forward, especially for events like the Olympics and the World Cup, because I know the World Cup that's coming up in the US is facing a lot of criticism about the insane prices for transport to the games and tickets and that sort of thing. And I think these games really did prove that it is. Look, the FIFA World Cup is a completely different ball game, but I think it is definitely an example that, like, if efforts are made, it really is possible to make a major sporting event, not necessarily affordable, but not insanely expensive.
Yeah. And
I think that's something that can definitely be looked at going forward. I mean, for example, a lot of these events were completely free. Some tickets were as low as 20 yuan, which is like $3 to $4. And then, of course, you had open beach events with minimal barriers between athletes and spectators, which I think is also quite a unique element of these particular games. But apparently this was a deliberate strategy. I'm not sure what the direct Chinese way of saying it is, but I think translated to English, it's sports benefiting the public, which makes elite sports feel accessible rather than exclusive. And I think that's incredibly important for new sports, because I think a lot beyond the coverage, you're also trying to encourage people to take up sport, not necessarily at a competitive level, but just to enjoy it as a hobby or to get involved in health and fitness, which I think is incredibly important, to keep people, young and active and happy, actually, just being active and taking part in healthy activities that are not necessarily just competitive, but are fun, incredibly accessible.
Right. The Asian Beach Games in Sanya is definitely an example where, sports fans can get close to the sports as much as possible. I think it's definitely a lesson other games can learn from. All right, before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. Kenya's Sebastian Sawe became the first man to run the marathon in under 2 hours when he won the London Marathon with a time of 1 hour, 59 minutes and 30 seconds. All top 3 finishes in London shattered the world record previously held by the late Calvin Kiptum. Sawe and runner-up Yumif Kiyaucha both ran in under 2 hours in London. Defending champion Paris Saint-Germain battled past Bayern Munich in a 5-4 thriller in the first leg of their Champions League semi-final at home. The match broke the record for most goals scored at this stage of the competition, and the PSG now head to Germany next week, 1 game away from another European final. PSG coach Luis Enrique thinks they may need to score 3 more in Munich to win the second leg.
Well, I think the rhythm of this match was very different from normal, and as always, the intensity was high. I asked my staff the same question: how many goals do you think we need to win the second leg? A minimum of 3. That's what we think.
Atletico Madrid and Arsenal drew 1-1 in the first leg of their semi-final, leaving everything to be decided in next week's return leg in London. The NBA has named the Dallas Mavericks forward Cooper Flagg Rookie of the Year. Flagg led all qualifying rookies with 21 points per game, while ranking second in assists and third in rebounds per game. With a season-high 51 points in the loss to the Orlando Magic last month, 19-year-old Flagg also became the youngest player in NBA history to record a 50-point performance. The Oklahoma City Thunder became the first team to reach the second round of the NBA playoffs after completing a dominant 4-game first-round sweep over the Phoenix Suns. Shai Gilgeous Alexander led the way with 31 points in Game 4 as the top-seeded Thunder advanced for the 3rd straight season. The San Antonio Spurs also progressed after a 4-1 series win against the Portland Trail Blazers. At Asian Beach Games in Sanya, Chinese speed climber Zhao Yicheng set a new world record of 4.58 seconds in the men's speed preliminaries, breaking the previous record of 4.64 seconds held by American Samuel Watson.
When I compete wearing the national team uniform, I feel I can beat anybody. I'm really excited that I handled the weight of this uniform because it's so special.
China swept the gold medals in speed climbing, with its athletes taking all 3 women's medals. Shenzhen Avatars guard He Xining was named the most valuable player of the 2025-26 CBA regular season, while Lu Wei of the Shanghai Sharks was voted the coach of the year. Shanghai center Hassan Whiteside was named the defensive player of the year. Shenzhen's Taquivian Smith was named the international player of the year. Welcome back. Unlike a typical multi-sport event that is packed into concrete arenas, the Sanya Asian Beach Games unfold right on the coastline with, open air, sand under feet and waves in the background. The only indoor venue was for the 3x3 basketball. I think it gives everything a strong vacation vibe. But for you, my question here is, does that setting make the competition feel less serious, or that's just the vibe of beach sports? Why do people love the Asian Beach Games?
I think so many people love it because, especially this one in Sanya, because it's a celebration of cultural diversity across Asia. Like you said, every Asian country is represented, and also it's a name card for Sanya and Hainan province to showcase itself as a gateway for China's opening up. This edition of the Asian Beach Games is the first international sporting event in Hainan after special customs operations began across the Hainan Free Trade Port. When you think of Hainan or Sanya, a lot of people think of it as a resort. And to me, that is true as well, because as a northerner, someone who lives without the sea, and anything from Sanya, sun, the beach, the waves, the coconut trees, they all feel very exotic to me. And going there, attending the games is already a vacation, whether you're a participant or a spectator. And because of Hainan's status as a free trade port, there's a lot of the things on offer. For example, Hainan is visa-free for 86 countries, including some attending the Asian Beach Games. And even for people from countries not currently covered by China's visa-free policy, they can still enjoy cultural activities, local food, and duty-free shopping in Hainan. Asian Beach Games allows the free trade port, allows easier entry for people and the game equipment. And also, I think it's a great chance for people to enjoy its inclusiveness and openness. These games and Sanya, they make a win-win because on the one hand, Sanya gets this stage to make itself better known as a hub for opening up. And the games get such high standard hosting level, and also the athletes get a very good platform to discover their potential.
Right, it's definitely a win-win situation, both for Sanya and the Asian Beach Games. Brandon, more broadly, how would you define the Asian Beach Games as a concept? Is this more about fun, participation, and spectacle, or is the pursuit of gold medals and national glory?
I think it's a combination of both, right? I think it definitely, don't get me wrong, I think any sort of international competition like this, whether it's happening, inside some sort of a massive stadium with, 50 to 100,000 fans, or whether it's on the beach, with people, fans kind of in beach wear and having a bit more of a relaxed vibe, the competition is definitely at an elite level, and it is definitely very competitive. But I think there is definitely just a different sort of aesthetic. I think it's a bit more relaxed in terms of like the vibe away from the competition. I think there's definitely a bit more of a social sort of relaxed element to it. And I think that might not necessarily be intentional. I don't think people probably, at least athletes, probably didn't go there with that mindset. But I think when you arrive at a venue like that, I think, and you see the surroundings and sort of, the local sort of culture and sort of attitude towards life, I think it just sort of naturally, that element sort of comes out. So yeah, I think unlike the Olympics or the Asian Games, there's no massive indoor arenas, and events are integrated into public beaches, for example, so there is that like element of people wanting to watch the sports, but there's also the element of like people that are just at the beach saying, hey, what's happening over here, and going, and just and watching sports without necessarily being diehard fans, for example. And like I said, spectators are often in swimming trunks and not in team jerseys. It's definitely more of like a sports embedded into everyday life kind of vibe. So I think it's a bit more lifestyle and sport, as opposed to just being entirely focused on sport, where people like eat, sleep, and breathe the sports that they're playing. Whereas I think which you see at the Olympics or the FIFA World Cup or whatever. But I think at this event it's more kind of like, let's give our best, do the absolute best that we can in our sport, and then afterwards have a swim at the beach, or go hang out with our friends at the local club or whatever. So I think there is definitely more of a combination of fun and glory, as opposed to it all being about like let's do the best that we can and sacrifice all joy and just do everything we can for the gold medal. I think there is definitely a bit more of a lifestyle element to it than other sort of competitions at this continental or international level. There's definitely, I would say, maybe less national pressure, a lot more emphasis on enjoyment, the environment, and just overall participation as well, not just from the athletes, but from the actual people around the venues where the action is taking place as well. So I think it has a couple of unique elements too. I think it does tend to attract younger audiences, which I think is also very difficult to do these days in any sport or any international sort of event. I think getting the eyes of a young audience these days with all of the options that they have, just on their smartphone, I think is very difficult. And I think the beach games is one of those events that is pretty good at attracting a younger audience, which I think is very important, not just from a viewership perspective, but also just getting young people active that weren't necessarily interested in sport. I think that's incredibly important. And like we've already mentioned, promotes emerging sports. And I think it lowers the psychological sort of barrier to engagement. I think when that sort of intense pressure is taken away, and it does become more of not an entirely social event, but it definitely does seem to encourage more of a social element compared to other sort of sporting events. I think that's incredibly attractive to people that aren't necessarily obsessed with sports. They may become obsessed with some of those sports later, may even become professionals. But I think because of the social element, there seems to be less of a psychologically scary barrier for people to enter in and try some of these sports. I think it's a lot more social than competitive. Not saying that it doesn't get competitive, but I think at just like a basic level, there just seems to be of a more open-minded sort of approach of like, hey, come and try this out. Like, let's see how it goes. Let's have some fun. And then it kind of progresses from there. So I think it's not anti-competition, but it's definitely a pro-accessibility competition first, I would say.
I get what you're saying. It gives you the idea that there's a very low cost for participation. You don't have to commit to it. Like, if I lose this game, it's not the end of the world.
But aside that vacation vibe, there's also fierce competition going on. For example, the Chinese athlete just broke the men's speed climbing world record at Asian Beach Games. You don't see that often at very casual competition. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.